Hello, and welcome to my review of Black Clover, chapter 367, titled Black Bonds. This week's chapter has actually given me some mixed feelings, and I actually have a fair bit to talk about with this one, so let's get into it. We open the chapter with Damnatio's defeat. He flashes back to the courthouse scenes at the end of the Elf reincarnation arc, and Damnatio thinks that it's unbelievable that he was saved by the Black Bulls. This isn't in a negative manner, as he looks very at peace when he falls. Asta says, "Sleep now. I promise I'll wake you up too." He then turns and runs to the Black Bulls. The Witch Queen gets up and encases everyone in her blood cocoons, and we see all of the injured Black Bulls in these blood cocoons. The Witch Queen says they all survived by a hair's breadth, and they'll manage somehow. Bird Woman, it's thanks to your magic that they survived. We see Nero cry as she smiles and says, "Thank goodness." The Witch Queen explains that she's used nearly all of her remaining strength, and she asks Vanessa to take her place as the next Witch Queen. And something of note here is the Witch Queen is visibly much older now. Vanessa is very shocked, but then Dorothy offers to take the position. She explains that she's already had more than her fair share of fun in her teens and 20s. Dorothy then brings up that their enemies are still substantially stronger than them, and they'll have to do their best not to die. The Witch Queen chimes in, saying, "Once the Black Bulls recover, you have some trick up your sleeve, don't you, anti-magic boy?" Asta affirms and says, "Libe," as he pulls one of his swords out of his grimoire. We then cut to a flashback in the Land of the Sun. Ryu is talking to Asta and Ichika. He says that it's only a guess, but a characteristic of anti-magic is that you apply magic power to something. You've already experienced this before, and then Asta thinks to when Yami gave him his katana during the Dante fight. Ryu continues by saying, Asta can bestow anti-magic by pouring it into things, but if you can grant it to objects, why can't you try sharing it to people too? And like with the Demon Dweller sword in the dungeon, you've gotten better at harnessing anti-magic power after your Zaten training, so there's a good chance you can pull it off now. Anti-magic and anti-magic power are unknown entities, so it's worth a try, ain't it? In the present time, we see Asta raise his Demon Dweller sword. 12 streams of anti-magic rise into the air and arc downwards, landing on each of the Black Bulls. Ryu gets another line. He says, "I'm sure affinity and the time you've spent together play a factor." This transitions to Asta saying, "I can share my power with everyone." Magna has a surge of anti-magic energy envelop him as he says, "You're a real piece of work. You know that, Asta?" We then get two different double-page spreads of the Black Bulls in their new anti-magic infused designs. Everyone's appearance is slightly altered, with a heavy emphasis on the color black. Across both pages reads, "We the Black Bulls are the strongest." Asta, smiling, says, "Let's go save the world." End of chapter. So this chapter was an absolute wild one. And let's begin the discussion here. Starting off with everyone surviving. I'm actually not a fan of this choice. I personally do think that Gray and Gauche should have died. Now, yes, technically, they were never confirmed to be dead, so they weren't brought back to life, so to speak. However, I think that it would have benefited the narrative if they had died. And I do feel like this takes away a little bit of the weight from the moment in chapter 364. I don't really mind that everyone survived, as it's kind of a given that most of the Black Bulls were going to survive throughout the story. But I feel like at the very least, Gauche should have died, because I think that one of the Black Bulls dying before we continue more in this final arc would really ramp up the stakes and just the overall insanity of what the final arc of Black Clover is. Now, on that note, I do really like that it's the Witch Queen who comes through and saves everyone. So, how does Asta's power work here? Honestly, it took me a while to figure it out. I reread the dungeon arc to get a better understanding of the Demon Dweller sword, and after that did about an hour and a half of research on how Asta's anti-magic works, how his swords work, and I've tried my absolute best to figure it out. But I might still be wrong, so take this explanation with a grain of salt. What Asta's doing here is coating the Demon Dweller sword in anti-magic, similar to what he did to the Demon Slasher when he first got it. Now, the Demon Dweller can absorb and fire other magic, like with Noelle's in the dungeon. So, instead of another person's magic, Asta is infusing the Demon Dweller with his anti-magic and sending it to the Black Bulls. Now, with the Black Bulls having anti-magic, can they still use their own magic? Well, I'm inclined to say no, but the answer is actually yes. We see Charmy on a black cloud. Luck has black lightning around him, and Vanessa has her Thread of Fate kitty on her arm. So it seems like anti-magic has been infused with their own magic, making it much more effective. Now, what are my personal opinions on this development? I'm split. I don't hate it, however, I don't love it. On one hand, I do feel like this somewhat takes away from the hard work that the Bulls put into developing their own magic and spells. However, from the look of it, they can still use their magic, so maybe this can be viewed as an enhancement to the power that they've already built up. Ryu does say that anti-magic is unknown, and that's true. There's a lot that we don't know about it, so I would not call this plot development a Deus Ex Machina. There's just too much that we don't know. I'm very interested to see the fights with the Black Bulls coming up. Back to my earlier statement from a couple of chapters ago, I do think that now the Bulls will actually go up against the Lucius clones. But, like I said, I really don't hate it, but I also don't love it. That being said, I am very, very happy that the Black Bulls will still be heavily involved in this final arc. As after the past few chapters, I was really questioning, like, is this how they're going to go out in the final arc? Which that would be quite a twist, but I'm actually quite glad they're still going to be as heavily involved as we now presume they will be. As for the designs, I'll try not to go through all of them here, but I do want to talk about my favorites, which is most of them. Although Zora seems to have had the smallest amount of change, I really like how the anti-magic flows off his mask, and it reminds me a lot of Jotaro's design with his hat and his hair, and it's very difficult to tell where one ends and the other begins. Luck's design looks really great with the black lightning around him, as well as his black gauntlets and boots. Nero looks almost like a demonic fairy with two new black wings and two devil tails. Gordon's design really accentuates the marks on his face, and I absolutely love that the black bull symbol on his hat is now just the skull of a bull. Now, Vanessa and Finral's have to be my two favorites. Finral's green tips of his hair are now black, and he also has gauntlets and boots. However, unlike Lux, which obviously resemble his lightning magic, Finral's seem to take direct inspiration from Asta's Devil Union with the lines that run up and down these gauntlets and boots. Vanessa seems to have had quite clearly the biggest change in her design. There's a lot of black dispersed across her outfit and overlaying the top on top of the clothes that she was already wearing. There are some very cool designs here, and the bottom portion of her skirt has this almost flower petal like design, which I think is meant to resemble the Witch Queen's outfit, and her kitty is now black. Something minor to mention here, though, is that with Gray and Gauche, there's large amounts of anti magic covering where they were wounded. I don't think this will be significant, as the Witch Queen has already healed them, but I do think that it's worth mentioning. Now, for anyone interested, I'm still rereading Black Clover. I'm in the early 30s right now, and I gotta say, there's a lot that I forgot because it's been over a year since I read it. And I'm having a lot of fun with this reread. I will say, though, the early portion of Black Clover really isn't my favorite, and there are some chapters that are a struggle to get through, but I am very, very excited to get to the Forest arc, the Magic Knight games, and then Elf Reincarnation and the Spade arc, as those four are really what hooked me on Black Clover, and I read those in no time at all. Overall, I don't hate the chapter, not at all. I just think that we need some time to see where this plot development goes. I'm actually very interested to hear what your guys' opinions are, and also, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about how Asta transferred the anti magic to the Black Bulls. I just did a lot of research on my own. I haven't consulted anyone else. That being said, I'll see you guys in the next Black Clover video. Bye, guys.